Arrogant woman rips dress of waitress, not knowing she's married to a millionaire. Truth revealed. Sarah rushed around the diner, her worn uniform clinging slightly to her as she balanced a tray piled high with burgers and milkshakes. The Maplewood diner was alive with chatter, the hum of families sharing stories and laughter. But today, the usual warmth was about to be interrupted. As the door swung open, in floated Jennifer, radiant and dripping with designer labels, a very different vibe from the usual customers who felt like family to Sarah. Sarah's heart sank. She could feel the condescension practically radiating from Jennifer, a glittering, arrogant whirlwind. "Do you have anything on the menu that doesn't scream low income?" Jennifer said, her voice dripping with disdain. Sarah, caught off guard, offered a warm smile. "Everything here is made with love. What can I get for you?" Instead of graciousness, Jennifer laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Love doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart," she shot back, causing an electric silence to tingle in the air. Just then, as if an invisible trigger was pulled, Jennifer pushed back her chair and, in her haste, caught Sarah's dress hem with her heel. The rip echoed in the diner's stunned silence, like a slap. Gasps erupted around them. "Let's not make a scene," Jennifer huffed, her smile faltering, but the damage was done. Faces turned toward Sarah, eyes wide with disbelief and simmering indignation. Yet then, community warmth surged through the diner. Murmurs of support began to rise like a tide. "Don't you dare talk to her like that," exclaimed Mrs. Grady from the corner booth. Others chimed in, voices rising in chorus, defending Sarah with an unwavering loyalty that only small-town living could foster. Undeterred, Sarah steadied herself. The embarrassment threatened to crush her spirit. She poured a cup of coffee for Mrs. Grady, her hands shaking ever so slightly. Just then, the chatter in the diner took a different turn. Whispers swirled. Mark's name surfaced, tinged with curiosity and awe. "Did you hear he's a war hero?" a voice remarked. "And there's talk of a family fortune." Little did they know, beneath every layer of struggle Sarah and Mark faced, lay a legacy Mark purposely buried. Rejected by the very wealth that could have given them an easier life, Mark chose honor over opulence. Jennifer stood silent, flabbergasted. Her own privileged life felt fragile as she observed the supports unpeeling around Sarah, revealing her dignity, an unexpected strength shining through the rent seam that Jennifer had wrought in her moment of arrogance. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Emotions swirled like leaves in an October breeze. As the tension thickened, Jennifer's heart pounded in her chest, each beat matching the growing echo of judgment from the diner patrons. What if they were right? What if all her assumptions were wrong? But could she swallow her pride and reconnect with the humanity she had dismissed? As Sarah absorbed the love from her community, rising above the humiliation with newfound resilience, Jennifer wrestled with a duality of terror and a growing desire for redemption. A storm brewed on the horizon, each woman's path drawn closer by the sheer force of unexpected confrontation. As the sun dipped low, casting shadows across the diner, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The real question lingered. Would these two women find common ground, or further divide in the face of undeniable truths? Sarah felt the warmth of her regulars, the comforting hum of their support weaving around her like a protective blanket. Each familiar face reflected an understanding, a shared history that made her heart swell. Yet all she could think about was the rip in her dress. A simple fabric tearing, yet it felt like a piece of her world had come undone. As she approached Mrs. Grady's table, the elderly woman leaned in with her wise eyes sparkling. Don't let that one get to you, sweetie, Mrs. Grady said softly. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You're worth more than all her fancy clothes. The words wrapped around Sarah like a warm hug. Across the diner, Jennifer shifted uncomfortably in her chair, glaring at the crowd that had turned against her. They weren't supposed to react this way. She was used to being in command, to having the last word. Dealing with scorn was a new experience, an unsettling reality that twisted in her gut, a curious blend of shame and annoyance. This isn't over, she whispered to herself, eyeing Sarah with a surge of determination. Meanwhile, Sarah filled the coffee pot, her fingers trembling as she worked. With each pour, she focused on the steam clouding her glasses, letting herself be lost in the brief respite. She hoped for her and Mark's dreams to thrive beyond these walls, where judgment couldn't touch them. An investment in a new life, away from the diner, wrapped in hope. But first, she had to face Jennifer again. "Can I get you anything else?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady, yet unable to hide a quiver. Jennifer's confidence was like fire, instant and consuming. "Actually, yes. I'm curious about that war hero husband of yours," Jennifer countered, her tone dripping with skepticism. "I'd think you'd be more accustomed to the finer things in life with a man like that." Sarah's heart raced. Velvet gloves and pearls came to mind. Not her world, not the man she loved. "He may not wear a suit," Sarah replied, her voice firming. "But he's a hero in ways you couldn't imagine." She turned to walk away, but pausing, she glanced back, fueled by a surge of unexpected bravery. You should really get to know someone before you judge them. A stinging silence fell as eyes bounced back and forth, the diner thick with unresolved energy. For now, Sarah had taken a stand, yet Jennifer's scoff echoed in the stillness. Perhaps pride would be her downfall. But Jennifer felt trapped. Surrounded by faces showing fierce loyalty to Sarah, she began to question everything. The weight of her assumptions crushed her, forcing a crack in her armored facade. "You're right," she finally admitted, the words tasting foreign on her tongue. "But do you really think he's as wonderful as you say?" The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Could Mark be her chance at redemption? Sarah turned to face her fully, sensing this was a moment for reflection. Would she share the truth about Mark's past, or let the air remain thick with tension? As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, patterns of light flickered across the diner. Sarah's heart beat in sync with the electric atmosphere. What twists lay ahead for both women, now intertwined in ways they never anticipated? With emotions teetering on the edge, the future felt both fragile and hopeful. And as the chime above the entrance door rang, announcing another customer, both Sarah and Jennifer instinctively turned to see who would step through, their fates now unwittingly bound. The door swung open, and in walked a tall man with gentle eyes and a warm smile. A gust of autumn air swept in behind him, making Sarah's heart leap. Despite the cool breeze, he radiated warmth, instantly brightening the dimly lit diner. It was Mark, her husband. "Hey, beautiful," he called out, his voice cutting through the tension swirling between Sarah and Jennifer. The regulars broke into smiles, appreciating the sight of Mark amidst the heavier emotions. Sarah felt relief wash over her, but right next to it, anxiety prickled at her skin. Would this be the moment when everything in her world shifted? "Mark!" she exclaimed, rushing to meet him. He swept her into a hug, and their connection felt like a lifeline. "How was work?" she asked, her voice a mix of eagerness and nervous anticipation. "Tough day, but worth it," he replied, pulling back to look at her, concern flickering across his brow. "You okay? You seem tense." The warmth of his touch provided a temporary comfort, but Sarah felt the weight of Jennifer's gaze. The other woman's presence was like a shadow, lingering just beyond the safety of their joyful moment. "Just the usual chaos," Sarah said, waving her hand dismissively, But Mark wasn't fooled. He frowned, his eyes darting to Jennifer, then back to Sarah. In that moment, Jennifer made her move. Gathering her composure, she pushed back her chair and approached Mark, looking down her nose at him, confidence seeping back into her stride. "You must be Mark," she said, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. "Sarah talks about you quite a bit. I didn't realize you were more ordinary than I expected." The contrast of her biting tone against her faux politeness made the air crackle. Mark's brow furrowed, and he glanced at Sarah, confusion dancing in his eyes. "That's rich coming from someone who doesn't know the first thing about real people," Mark replied, earning a mix of gasps and murmurs from the other diners. Sarah's heart swelled with pride at his words, knowing he was defending their life together against the steel-grip snobbery that hung around Jennifer like a bad perfume. "What's ordinary, my dear?" Jennifer pressed, refusing to flinch. "You should really tell her about the finer things." "No, I think I'll let my wife cherish what she values most," Mark said, his voice steady. He locked eyes with Sarah, and for a moment, the world outside the diner faded. "Isn't that right, love?" Sarah felt the heat rise in her cheeks as she nodded, her heart pounding. Was this a chance for her to share the truth, to show Jennifer the depth of Mark's character beyond just the surface? But the thought of exposing old wounds made her hesitate. "Mark may not fit in your box of fancy suits," she said slowly, the words sliding out like sweet honey. "But he's anything but ordinary. He fought for his country, not for glory, but for the people he loves." Jennifer's expression faltered for just a moment, vulnerability peeking through. But Sarah felt the sharp edge of judgment lingering, ready to pounce if given the smallest slip. The other patrons leaned in, their breath held. This wasn't just about the ripped dress anymore. It was a clash between two worlds, one of genuine love and another of pretentious pride. "Tell me more," Jennifer finally said, her curiosity piqued, but her tone still defensive. Suddenly, the energy shifted again, and Sarah found herself standing on a precipice. Would she lay bare the deeper truths, risking everything? The choice hung in the air, heavy with unspoken stories. As Mark gently squeezed her hand, she felt the warmth rush through her, emboldening her to continue. But would it be enough to hold Jennifer's gaze long enough for that change to take place? The realization washed over Sarah like a tide, leaving her breathless. Hope hung in the air, thick and sweet. And just as she opened her mouth to respond, the door swung open yet again, this time to a figure from the past who could reshape it all. What kind of storm would follow this unexpected reunion? As the door creaked wider, a figure stepped inside, bringing with him a memory that hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. It was Ethan, her childhood friend, a boy who had once been her whole world before life scattered their paths. Years had changed him. He was now a confident man with an easy smile and a presence that filled the room. "Sarah?" he called, scanning the diner until his eyes met hers. "Is that you?" Suddenly, the noise of the diner faded away, and it was just the two of them in the midst of the chaos. Mark's hand tightened around hers, but Sarah felt dizzy. Her stomach knotted, a mix of joy and a dread she couldn't quite articulate. "Ethan," she finally managed, stepping toward him, her heart racing. Memories surged. School dances, late-night talks on the phone, laughter shared. All of it felt like a lifetime ago. She hadn't seen him since he moved to the city. He stepped closer, gauging her. "Wow, you look amazing. Life's treating you well, I see." His gaze softened at her, as if trying to bridge years of distance with one genuine look. "Thanks," she replied, her voice a mere whisper. "What are you doing here?" Before he could respond, Jennifer's voice cut through. "And who are you?" The condescension dripped from her words like poison, and the tension in the diner crackled once more. Mark's grip on Sarah tightened as he shifted, clearly frustrated. "This is Ethan, a friend," he said, his voice steady but edged with irritation. Friend? Or something more? Jennifer smirked, her confidence rearing up again. Just a friend, Sarah quickly replied. But as she glanced at Ethan, truth washed over her. His importance in her life had never really faded. He knew her in ways no one else did. In his eyes, she could see the recognition of shared moments and laughter that felt like home. I've missed you, Sarah, Ethan said quietly, his gaze unwavering. I wanted to check in. I heard about your diner. Can I come back to chat? He looked between Sarah and Mark, an apologetic smile twitching at his lips, revealing no intention of causing trouble. Oh, sure, Sarah exclaimed, relieved for a moment to escape the confrontation with Jennifer. Let's sit. As they moved to a booth, Mark trailed behind with a quiet tension in his posture. The warmth that had enveloped her moments ago began to chill. She could sense that her husband needed assurance even as she felt the magnetic pull of nostalgia tugging at her. Ethan slid into the booth, and the moments that followed were peppered with laughter and reminiscing. Remember that time we climbed the old oak tree? He asked, his eyes sparkling with amusement. And you fell right into that muddy puddle. Sarah laughed, the memory brightening the atmosphere. You were such a klutz. Mark watched silently, his expression unreadable. Was he feeling left out? Jealous? As the laughter rang around them, it also created an awkward rift, something unspoken passing between the three of them. Sarah wanted to bridge the gap, to remind Mark of the love they shared, but could she articulate that in front of Ethan, whose presence brought back echoes of a life she'd nearly forgotten? Just then, Jennifer slid into the seat across from them, unabashedly defiant as she leaned in, her eyes sparkling with mischief. So, what's a woman like you doing with a man like him? Jennifer, Mark warned, his voice low. Tension crackled again as Sarah felt the sharp edge of her reality slice through the moment. Let's keep this civil, Ethan said, flashing Jennifer an unsettlingly calm smile. But she didn't flinch. She wasn't done yet. Sarah swallowed hard. It was time to draw a line. Ethan's here because he's a part of my past, she said, her voice steadying, directed at Jennifer but anchored in her truth. But Mark is my present, and my future. Just as they locked eyes, laughter still hanging in the air, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. Uncertain, she checked it, and her heart dropped as she read the message. An emergency from the diner's manager. Excuse me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as she felt those familiar waves of chaos pulling at her again. I need to take this. As she stood up to leave, she caught a glimpse of Ethan's concerned gaze, Mark's simmering tension, and Jennifer's almost gleeful anticipation of turmoil. What was about to unfold when Sarah returned? Would her world continue to deepen in complexity, or could she find a way back to simple clarity? Her heart raced as she stepped outside, ready to confront the unexpected storm waiting just around the corner. The cool air hit Sarah like a slap as she stepped outside. Her breath came out in quick bursts, mingling with the earthy scent of rain that had just begun to fall. The diner, once a familiar sanctuary, felt like a battlefield now torn by confusion and old flames igniting. She hurried to her car, heart pounding. The notification from her manager buzzed in her hand again. Emergency at the diner. The message blared. She quickly grabbed a hold of her keys, feeling the weight of the moment. But as she fumbled for her seatbelt, the absurdity of her life hit her. Ethan's infectious smile lingered within her thoughts. Mark's glance full of tension chased after it, and Jennifer's meddling words sliced through her confidence. If Sarah felt lost, then how must they feel? Get it together, Sarah, she muttered under her breath, determination overpowering any doubts. A quick glance at her reflection in the rearview mirror revealed the woman she had become, an undetermined blend of past dreams and present responsibilities. She started the engine and pulled away from the curb, thoughts racing with the speed of the tires on the wet asphalt. When she arrived at the diner, The situation inside was more chaotic than she anticipated. Tables were overturned, the coffee machine spewed a fountain of hot liquid, and a few customers stood, mouths agape, while the staff darted around like startled birds. "Sarah, thank God you're here." Jason, her assistant manager, almost collided with her as she stepped through the door. "We've lost power, and the kitchen is a mess. We're trying to clean up. Let's get everyone settled first. Make sure nobody's hurt," she said, taking a deep breath to steady her racing heart. In the midst of the flurry, her mind drifted back to the confrontation with Ethan. The warmth of their memories felt like sunlight breaking through a fog. But she couldn't allow herself to drift into those thoughts now. She had a team to lead and a restaurant to save. As Sarah directed the staff and helped calm anxious customers, she caught a glimpse of Mark walking into the diner, his face tight with worry. Their eyes met, and a whirlwind of unspoken emotions passed between them. Questions, doubts, and a desperate need for connection. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice steady but eyes glinting with concern. "Just a temporary setback," she assured him, pushing down the worry that bubbled up within. But his presence sent her heart racing again, providing comfort, but also a reminder of the distance that seemed to grow between them even amid their togetherness. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, followed by a female shout. "What the hell is going on in here?" Sarah turned to see Jennifer, hands on her hips, surveying the chaos with a smirk plastered across her face. "You clearly need my help," she called out, condescendingly, her voice almost playful. "No thanks. We've got it handled." Sarah's response rolled off her tongue before she could think, but Jennifer wasn't one to back down easily. "Oh, please. Can't you see you're in over your head?" Mark stepped forward, moving to place a protective hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We don't need any more drama, Jennifer." Jennifer's smile twisted into an almost amused frown. "Drama? I'm not causing any. Just here to point out your flaws." The tension in the air made Sarah's heart pound louder. Mark's frustration at Jennifer was evident, and Sarah's patience began to wane. Jennifer thrived on this, feeding off their strife. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, stepping to the forefront. Her voice echoed through the diner, silencing everyone momentarily. "This is my diner, and we'll handle it without this toxicity." She took a deep breath, scanning the faces around her, feeling the weight of their expectations. Mark's eyes softened on her, but she could see the nerves still tinging his expression. Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket again, a message from Ethan. "Sarah, let's talk. Meet me outside?" Her gut twisted. Here was her past reaching out to her in the middle of turbulence. Would her choice define her future? With determination and uncertainty battling within, her gaze shifted towards the door again. What awaited her outside? Friends meant to reassure her, or a past that could disrupt her present? Would she be brave enough to confront the feelings that lingered just beyond those doors? The moment Sarah stepped outside, the cool rain hit her like a welcome embrace, washing away the chaos swirling in her mind. She hesitated, her feet glued to the ground as if some unseen force was holding her back. The diner behind her was alive with the sounds of turmoil, but out here, the world felt quieter, more manageable. The streetlights flickered, illuminating the wet pavement, and there, in the flickering glow, stood Ethan. His familiar figure seemed both comforting and alarming. She hadn't prepared for this confrontation, this moment that had loomed over her like a storm cloud. As she stepped closer, she caught the hint of desperation in his eyes, mirroring her own tangled emotions. "Sarah," he began, his voice thick with urgency. "I had to see you. I know everything got out of control back there. I'm sorry for dropping that bombshell on you." "Ethan," she started, but the words stuck in her throat. The ache of unspoken memories was a tidal wave threatening to crash over her, recalling all the laughter and love they once shared. But she steadied herself. She couldn't allow nostalgia to cloud her judgment. Not now. I need you to understand, he continued, taking a small step closer. I wasn't trying to ruin anything. I miss you, and I thought you deserved to know the truth about me. His eyes searched hers desperately, as if he were fishing for understanding in their depths. But the truth felt painfully tainted. Sarah had built her life after Ethan. She had created a world that felt stable, even amidst chaos. What truth, Ethan? You left without a word. You can't just come back and expect me to forget everything. His face fell, and she saw the regret etched into his features. I didn't have a choice. My family, they forced me to leave, to go to New York and take over the business. They thought you wouldn't fit into their world. I was too afraid to fight back. I thought I could protect you. Protect me? She echoed incredulously, her heart racing. It felt like an insult. Leaving was your way of protecting me? I thought you'd move on. Find someone else. I couldn't bear to watch you waste your life waiting for me to come back. For me to come to my senses. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I never stopped thinking about you, Sarah. Not for a single day. An overwhelming surge of emotions crashed through her. She wanted to scream, to unleash all the pent-up frustration and hurt of years spent wondering if she had meant anything to him. But more powerfully, she felt drawn to the idea of what once was. Are you asking me to wait for you again? She finally asked, her voice softening as vulnerability crept in. No, he said vehemently. I'm asking you to choose. I'm asking if we can try again. Together. But just as his words sank in, the diner erupted into chaos again. A loud crash echoed from inside, and Sarah turned instinctively. Her heart raced, not from the revelation, but from the realization that she still had responsibilities. Her team needed her. I can't just walk away from everything I've built. Not now, she murmured, torn between two worlds. Then let me help you, Ethan insisted. I've made enough connections. I can do something for this diner. Sarah shook her head, feeling the weight of his offer. I don't want your help. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. He stepped back, hurt flickering on his face. What if your independence comes at a high cost? What's that supposed to mean? She shot back, her voice trembling with emotion. As if to answer, the diner's door flew open, and Mark emerged, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. Their eyes locked, and Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. Mark's presence was a reassuring anchor, solid but also a reminder of the unresolved feelings she wished she could sweep aside. Sarah, are you okay? He asked, glancing at Ethan. The tension thickened, palpable in the misty air. Everything's fine, she lied, her heart pounding with the weight of her words. But there was so much more to resolve. Mark stepped closer, his protective instincts kicking in. You don't have to do this alone. We're a team. As Sarah looked between the two men, the heaviness of her situation settled in her chest. Choices loomed like shadows over her, dark and foreboding. Could she really balance her past with the present? And what was she willing to sacrifice for the future she truly desired? The rain fell harder, blurring the line between her two worlds. Can I have just a moment? She finally asked, breathless, her gaze alternating between Ethan and Mark. The decision that hung in the air felt monumental. The stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined, and something in her shifted, setting the stage for a confrontation that could change everything. Would she have the courage to confront her feelings? Or would her indecision lead her down a path she couldn't come back from? The rain drummed on the pavement, creating a rhythm as chaotic as Sarah's thoughts. She held her breath, eyes flickering between Ethan's pleading gaze and Mark's steadfast presence. Each heartbeat marked the distance growing heavier between them. What do you mean, high cost? She finally managed to ask, her voice catching in her throat, echoing the fear that gnawed at her stomach. Ethan's expression shifted, the desperation transforming into something more serious. I mean, if you don't accept help, you could lose everything you've worked for. Sometimes pride can blind you to what's essential. Mark stepped forward, cutting through the tension with an unwavering gaze. Or maybe it's about standing up for what you want, regardless of the consequences, Ethan. Sarah doesn't owe you anything. Mark. Sarah started, but was interrupted by a loud crash inside the diner, pulling her focus back to the chaos she had tried to escape. I need to go back. They need me, she said, a mixture of resolve and uncertainty in her voice. Just think about it, Sarah, Ethan pressed, taking a step toward her. What if I could help? A new supplier, renovations, anything to make it work. I want to be there for you. Mark scoffed, arms crossed tightly over his chest. And how do we know you won't just run again when things get tough? What makes you any different this time? Stop, Sarah said, feeling her pulse quicken. They were both right in a way, and yet that only made her decision harder. Could she trust Ethan again? She felt lost, as if she were playing on a scale where every shift could tip her life into chaos. The dim light from the street lamps glistened on the raindrops falling like tears from the sky, mirroring the turmoil within her. She had built a life, a purpose, anchored in the diner, surrounded by people who depended on her. The thought of losing everything she had fought for felt impossible to bear. I can't risk it all, she whispered, the weight of her dilemma crushing her spirit. Ethan's brow furrowed, sadness shadowing his eyes. What if there's another way? You don't have to choose between us. Maybe I do, she heard herself say, her voice cracking. A part of her wanted to cry out in frustration, wanting to throw caution to the wind and embrace the past. But another part held her in place, grounded, realistic, aware of the life she had forged without him. Mark took a step closer, his expression softening. Sarah, listen to your heart. You deserve to be happy, even if it means letting someone help. The rain intensified, blurring the outlines of everything around her, as if the world itself was urging her to make a choice. But what if my happiness comes at someone else's expense? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan flinched at her words, an almost imperceptible crack forming in the facade he had held up. I want to help you succeed, not hurt you. I just wish you could see that. In this moment, I just see confusion, Sarah admitted. And I don't want to hurt either of you. Silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the droplets hitting the ground. Her heart felt heavy, pinned between past affection and present loyalty. The dilemma was suffocating, yet her instincts clawed at her to take control. Sarah, Mark's voice pulled her back again. You need to decide who you want to be, not just for others but for yourself. As the tension hung like the storm clouds above, the electricity in the air shifted. Sarah took a deep breath, daring to glance at the two men who had unknowingly shaped her life. She could feel the moments slipping away, the urgency tangling with her fear. Maybe it's time I figure out who I really am, she finally said, a mix of determination and uncertainty threading through her voice. Would she find the strength to not only confront her past but shape her future? The night was heavy with expectation, and Sarah felt the world around her tremble as if waiting for her answer. But as she prepared to speak, a figure appeared in the distance, and the pure panic that spread through her veins threatened to change everything once more. As the figure drew closer through the hazy curtain of rain, Sarah's heart raced. She squinted, trying to make out the silhouette moving purposefully toward them. Anxiety coiled tightly in her chest, making it hard to breathe. Who is that? Mark asked, frowning. I don't know, Sarah replied, tension prickling at the back of her neck. The flash of light from a nearby street lamp illuminated the person's face just enough for her to recognize. It was Lily, the woman from her diner, associated with the local charity events, but infamous for her biting remarks and haughty demeanor. "Sarah," Lily called, her voice cutting through the rain. "You're needed back inside. There's a situation." "A situation?" Sarah echoed, worry washing over her. "What's happened?" "They're about to get into a huge argument over a tab. You need to calm things down before it escalates." Ethan stepped beside her, a flicker of concern on his face. "Let's go. That diner is your home and they need you." "No," Sarah said, biting her lip. She glanced back at Mark and then to Ethan. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep running back and forth trying to please everyone." Despite the rain pouring harder, a part of her longed for some clarity amidst the chaos. But then Lily's impatient huff brought her back to the situation at hand. "Sarah, this is serious. People are getting upset, and they need a voice of reason. Don't you care about the diner?" "I do care," Sarah snapped, the tension squeezing her heart. "But I can't continue being pulled in every direction. I'm tired." Mark placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You can do this. You've always been the strong one. Just take a breath and remember why you started." Yet the words felt heavy, burdened with expectations. She caught Ethan's gaze, the same look he always had when he believed in her. But she also felt Mark's steadfast support, emanating warmth, steady and unwavering. It was an impossible choice to make, and she was standing at the edge, waiting in uncertainty. "Maybe I need a moment," Sarah said, pulling away from Mark's grip. "I need to think." "Now isn't the time," Lily nearly shouted, agitation creeping into her tone. "You're not just some waitress, Sarah. You have potential. You can't let someone like Ethan distract you from that." The words struck a nerve, simmering her emotions to boiling point. "It's not about distraction, Lily. It's about trust, something you wouldn't understand." Ethan arched an eyebrow, but Sarah didn't want to look at the two men fighting for her attention. Instead, she turned her focus back to the diner, where chaos beckoned. As she stepped forward, her heart raced, adrenaline mixing with doubt. She glanced over her shoulder at Ethan and Mark one last time. "I'll be right back. Just wait," she said, forcing her voice steady. The two men exchanged concerned glances as Lily nudged Sarah to hurry. Each step felt like she was crossing an invisible line where reality blurred with her dreams, where trust and loyalty clashed against ambition. Inside the diner, voices rose higher, clashing like thunder, and she could sense the storm brewing. Depression cloaked her like a shroud, the weight of expectations thickening the air. A few heads turned as she entered, eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and hope. "Everyone calm down," Sarah raised her voice over the din. "What's going on?" As silence fell, she could feel the eyes on her, waiting. Could she really change the tide of another disaster? Amidst it all, an unsettling thought wider than any argument hovered over her. But just as a voice started explaining the situation, a shattering noise erupted from the back, catching everyone off guard. A hand shot up. Sarah's heart sank. She turned, dread taking hold, and faced a scene that would redefine everything she thought she'd resolved. The air inside the diner shifted instantly, the weight of tension hanging thick, as Sarah turned to see the commotion. At the back, she saw a young woman, her face twisted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. Her hands were gripping a torn piece of fabric, the remnants of Sarah's apron, which had snagged in a reckless pull during a heated exchange. "What did you do?" Sarah's voice trembled, dread pooling in her stomach. The woman, whose name Sarah couldn't quite recall, despite serving her coffee countless times, shot back with eyes glimmering with hostility. "You think you can just talk down to people? You don't deserve that uniform." Gasps rippled through the diner. Customers turned, some shocked, others intrigued, as if watching a live show unravel before their eyes. The incredulity grew, an unsteady mixture of anger and disbelief that mirrored Sarah's own feelings. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, raising her voice again. "You can't just get into a fight over some misunderstanding. She felt the fabric in her fingers, an anchor that was quickly being ripped away. Ruffling the apron in her hands was hardly the image of strength, but standing there, she pushed through the embarrassment and truly faced the crowd. There was a part of her that longed to retreat, to hide behind the counter and breathe, but the eyes watching her urged her to stand tall. "What's happening here?" Mark's voice suddenly cut in, firm and grounding. He stepped into the crowd, eyes darting from Sarah to the angry customer. It was a protection meant for her, but it felt too forced. "Mark, don't," she pleaded softly, her gaze searching his for understanding. "I can handle this." For a fleeting moment, she feared everything would fall apart. Her position at the diner, her sense of self, even the delicate web of relationships she had tried to mend. In that instant, the arguments and frustrations of the patrons faded into a distant echo, as a new realization settled heavily within her. She couldn't keep allowing others to dictate how she saw herself. "Everyone, this isn't about my apron or whatever misunderstanding there is," Sarah said, her voice steady now. "It's about how we treat each other. This diner is my home, and I want us to coexist peacefully. We can resolve this without more anger." People exchanged uncertain glances, and for a moment, it felt as if the storm would subside. But the intense stare of the woman lingered, refusing to let go. "You just think you're better than us!" Another customer shouted from the back, adding fuel to the fire. Sarah felt her composure teeter. Those words sliced through her more sharply than the rain outside. The truth was, she had felt judged before, like she was never enough. But this wasn't the time to recall all the moments of doubt. "I'm just a waitress trying to do my job. If I've offended anyone, I truly apologize." The sincerity of her voice seemed to weave its way into the hearts that were still simmering. She crossed her arms, feeling the warmth of the gaze from Mark and Ethan behind her, the reassurance that her voice could matter. But as the air quieted, a deeper shadow flitted across her mind. She couldn't ignore the tumultuous brewing beneath the surface. And just as she thought clarity was settling in, an unexpected scream shattered the tenuous peace, coming from the doorway. "What on earth is going on here?" a stern voice boomed, pulling everyone's attention. Sarah turned, dread creeping back into her heart. Standing in the doorway was someone she never expected to see. The mayor. Tension tripled instantly, and confusion swirled like gusts of wind through the diner. Why was he here? And more importantly, what could this mean for her growing turmoil? As the mayor strode further into the diner, reality pressed down on Sarah again, like the rain against the windows, a feeling that nothing would ever be the same after this moment. The mayor strode through the diner with an air of authority, his expressed concern instantly filling the room. Conversations faded, replaced by an electric silence. All eyes turned toward him, except for Sarah's, whose gaze remained locked on the young woman fuming in the back. "Excuse me, what seems to be the trouble?" the mayor asked, looking around, his voice deep and commanding. The young woman scoffed, her anger unyielding. "This place is just a mess. I got torn apart by the waitress over a silly mistake." She raised the remnants of Sarah's apron, gesturing for the mayor to see her indignation. "Is that so?" the mayor replied, turning his attention to Sarah, brow arched. "What's your side of this?" Sarah steadied her breath, feeling all the eyes on her press down like weights. "I was trying to calm the tensions among customers," she explained, her own voice shaking, yet she pushed through it. "We all make mistakes. It's my job to serve everyone here, and I genuinely want people to feel at home." Mark's hand landed gently on her back, a soft gesture of support, grounding her as she gathered her strength. "Exactly," Sarah continued, finding her voice as she spoke to the crowd. "We're supposed to be building a community here, not tearing each other apart. I'm sorry if my earlier words came off wrong, but I can assure you, it was never my intention to make anyone feel less than." A few heads nodded, and there was a flicker of understanding crossing some faces, but others remained defiant. Ethan moved closer, also positioning himself as a buffer, and Sarah felt the power of their united front amidst the escalating frustration. "Listen," the mayor said, clearing his throat. "It's clear this diner means a lot to you, Sarah, and it should mean something to this community, too. To be part of this town means embracing each other. Flaws, accidental rips and aprons and all." "Exactly!" Mrs. Grady chimed in from her booth, backing Sarah with her warm, supportive tone. "We're not perfect, but we can work through this together, can't we?" That voice of support swelled the hopes trapped within Sarah. It fueled her belief that people could rise above misunderstandings. Taking a deep breath, Sarah turned back to the young woman who still glared at her. "Can we talk about this? Maybe over a fresh cup of coffee? I'll make it myself." The woman hesitated, eyes darting between Sarah and Mark, then finally broke her icy facade. "Fine," she conceded, crossing her arms but clearly looking less aggressive. "Great," Sarah said, relief pouring through her. "Let's all calm down and have a chat, yeah?" The tension dulled, and a few patrons began to murmur amongst themselves, revealing a window of empathy and recognition of shared humanity. "Just see that everyone gets treated kindly." The mayor nodded affirmatively, clearly pleased with how things were shifting. "That's what keeps our community strong." Mark squeezed Sarah's shoulder gently, a silent reassurance mixed with pride in how she was taking charge. As the storm raged outside, the warmth inside the diner began to pulse softly, easing the buildup of anxiety. The collective camaraderie of those patrons shifted the atmosphere, slowly breaking down the walls Jennifer constructed earlier. From the corner of her eye, Sarah caught a glimpse of Jennifer looking on, a flicker of something, perhaps admiration, flitted across her features for the first time amidst all the chaos. "All right, I'll clean up after this," Sarah said firmly, turning back to her customers. "Let's not let a torn apron define our day." And with that, she moved back into the kitchen, comforted by the familiar sounds of pots and pans clinking together, feeling the steady pulse of her home once more. Outside, the rain continued to pelt against the diner windows, but inside, laughter and conversation were rising, the fabric of community woven tighter with each supportive word. As she ladled fresh coffee, ready to turn the tide, Sarah felt a heartwarming glow. Hope rushed back into her. She was no longer torn between her past and present. The moment had revealed her resilience, a beautiful reminder that amidst the chaos, she was finally finding her footing. And in that moment of realization, she knew she didn't have to choose. She just needed to embrace who she was and who she was becoming. But beyond the diner, unknown chapters of life still beckoned, leaving her with choices not quite finished yet. She squeezed the coffee pot, smiling at the solid warmth it anchored in her hands, ready to face whatever the next dawn would bring, refusing to let the past dictate her future. As the door swung open, sunlight began piercing through the rain clouds, illuminating the diner like a beacon of transformation. A place where connection was forged, and love intertwined with resilience. Now more than ever she could feel it. Follow your dreams, embrace the uncertainties, and let every new day whisper the promise of what could be. As the sun shone brighter, memories began drifting on the wind, echoing whispers of old and new, ready to let Sarah embark on a journey she never would have imagined. But one thing was clear. The future belonged to her, and she wouldn't shy away from it. Now, as we wrap up this journey, I need you to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you're the first to hear about these incredible stories. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread this amazing journey. And don't forget to comment your thoughts. Let us know how this ending touched your heart. Share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Join the family by getting involved today.